name is Jacqueline Shipe, and I am the Chief Executive Officer of the Global Ties Alabama. We were founded 56 years ago in Huntsville, Alabama, and we are a proud member of the Global Ties Youth Network, which hosts international visitors and exchanges of emerging leaders and youth ambassadors every year. During the COVID pandemic, our network demonstrated resilience and converted from in-person to virtual programming. This Institute's series of interactive Zoom sessions are designed to engage global diplomats and subject matter experts with the HBCU community, the historically Black colleges and university communities. In fact, each session will have a question and answer segment, which we encourage you to use the chat functionality for your questions. So it is a privilege to welcome each of you to the launch of the 2021 REACH HBCU Global Institute. This program is funded by the U.S. Department of State Citizen Diplomacy Action Fund and designated for U.S. exchange alumni. When Rihanna Miller, co-lead, and I learned about this grant opportunity, we immediately envisioned a project that could foster alumni network development and the international relations development of HBCU students throughout the state of Alabama. Our lineup of speakers are all global citizens and extremely impressive. We are also very thankful for the support we've received from HBCU administrators and faculty. And through our collaboration, we are excited to engage with our target audience, HBCU students. So let's begin today's session with the opening plenary. I'm honored to present one of Global Ties Alabama's strategic partners, Stacy White, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Professional and Cultural Exchanges of the U.S. Department of State. Ms. White is originally from Central Texas, and she has served as an American diplomat abroad at U.S. embassies in Canada, Mexico, Finland, Panama, Malaysia, and Indonesia. Most recently, Ms. White was Minister Counselor for Public Affairs in Ottawa, Canada, where she spent most of 2020 as the Acting Deputy Chief of Mission. Before entering the Foreign Service, Ms. White was an award-winning broadcast journalist in Texas and Oklahoma. She graduated from the University of Texas in Austin with a bachelor's degree in journalism and earned her master's in international relations at Webster College in the Netherlands. As mentioned, she is a native Texan, and she and her teenage son spend most of their holidays at the Central Texas homestead. Even though Stacy was in Canada, we found a way to work together. And that's what I really appreciate about her. And so when we were looking for our opening plenary speaker to represent the Department of State, we didn't really have to search very far. And Stacy immediately accepted our invitation. So Stacy, please greet our audience today.
Thank you, Jackie. And it is exactly true what she says. When Jackie called and asked me to do this, I didn't even have to check my calendar. I just thought, okay, Jackie Shipe wants me, and I can't think of anything more important than the nexus of students, international relations, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. So thank you so much for inviting me today, and congratulations to you and Raina and everyone else for asking for this funding, because this is exactly the kind of project that we hope to support. So hello to Global Ties Alabama, students, faculty, exchange alumni, distinguished ambassadors, and all those international affairs and global affairs, and interested in that and creating a brighter future for our world. I'm grateful for your participation today and honored to be able to speak to you at this wonderful event. As Jackie said, Last year, like all the rest of us, I got swept into COVID. And when it's basically the #2 position in Canada, I spent a year getting all of us down ready for telework, negotiating with the Canadians about closing the border and border protocols and safety protocols and vaccine supplies and all the rest of it. I found it very interesting, but I have to say that the most fulfilling work that I've had in my Foreign Service career has been working on the program that connects to Jackie and Global Ties Alabama, and that is the exchange networks of the State Department. As she said, in my role right now, I have the privilege of overseeing professional exchanges, cultural, sports, and high school exchanges, including those that will teach Americans a critical language by sending them abroad. And our flagship professional exchange, which is called the International Visitor Leadership Program. Now, these programs allow us to share the American experience with the world as part of our nation's foreign policy. But before I talk a little bit about how diplomacy begins here at home in America, I'd like to tell you a bit about the State Department's current foreign policy priorities as set by the National Security Council. Our country's destiny and our citizens' future is linked to what happens beyond our shores. Well, right now, the United States faces complex health, economic, social justice, and climate crises in a world of rising nationalism, receding democracy, and growing rivalries with China, Russia, and other authoritarian states. Well, these global challenges, fueled by a technological and communications revolution reshaping the future in real time, are unprecedented. President Biden has committed to making diplomacy the tool of first resort for our country to achieve the administration's top foreign policy priorities. And what are these priorities? Beating the COVID-19 pandemic and recovering from the economic crisis it brought, while building a more equitable, inclusive global economy, renewing democracy, dealing humanely and effectively with the crises on our southern border and the historic levels of forced migration around the world, reinvigorating our alliances and partnerships, and restoring confidence in our global leadership as a reliable partner, and, of course, tackling climate change. So where does Global Ties Alabama come into all this, and you and me and we together? Well, one thing that you may have noticed when I listed all this modest list of challenges and opportunities is that while all of these issues directly affect our lives, American safety, security, prosperity, none of them take place just within our own country's borders. These issues transcend borders, boundaries, nationalities, individual identities, and require some sort of a coordinated response of communities, of networks of people, all pulling together. So this is the public aspect of diplomacy, and the State Department partners with the American public and foreign publics to develop exchange programs that allow us to share ideas, get to know each other better, and be in a stronger position to work together on some of these considerable challenges. Now, when I say that this allows us to share the American experience with the world, please understand that I didn't say the American example. I mean that our country too is a work in progress, and the IVOP program allows an authentic experience to take place that acquaints our visitors, who are themselves leaders or emerging leaders in their spaces, with the realities of what Americans deal with. You know, we have a network of global ties around the country in every state, and several chapters in different states. And one of the things we do with this exchange, as Jackie may have explained or will explain later, is visitors come over to explore a thematic issue, and they travel around the country, not just staying in Washington or New York to get the perspective of those peoples or the federal governments there, but to get a little bit more of an introduction to the breadth and the complexity of the American experience. So we foster dialogues with other countries and create avenues for people-to-people connections with the help of these private sector organizations that do just as Global Ties Alabama says, globalizing Alabama, one handshake at a time. Let me give you an example. Each year, the State Department gets nominations from our US embassies and consulates around the world of outstanding women who do powerful work, often in the face of personal danger. Some of these women are chosen for a special award, the International Woman of Courage Award. After being recognized in Washington by the Secretary of State and the First Lady, they embark on an international visitor leadership program curated by our office, a partner NGO, and the Global Ties chapters around the country. Last year, Global Ties Alabama hosted one of these women, Amini Kulani. Amini Kulana is a survivor of the Assad regime's detention and torture centers, which have arbitrarily detained more than 140,000 Syrians, and has dedicated her life to helping the families of forcibly disappeared Syrians. She is a longtime civil society activist. She fled Syria in 2014 after her release from prison. She was in prison for 6 months for peaceful activism. She survived, but her 3 brothers died while in the regime custody. She is a founding member of Families for Freedom, a woman-led movement launched by families whose loved ones have been detained and disappeared in Syria. Forced from her home and country, living under constant threat as a refugee, she continued to advocate for human rights, democracy, and peace in Syria. So when in Alabama, GTA arranged for her to speak to the Alabama State Legislature, where I understand that she received a standing ovation. She spoke in English after having had the chance to practice the night before with the host families of a home hospitality event that had been arranged for her. So Alabamans were able to get the very personal, just dropped my light, the very personal perspective of this brave woman and how she experienced the warmth of your hospitality in her personal and public reception. So if you plan to be a volunteer for Global Ties Alabama, I'm sure you'll have the opportunity to interact with amazing people like Amina, and I encourage you to do so. Our exchange program menu also includes opportunities for American students like you to study and live abroad. These experiences are often life-changing, not only for you, but also for the people you meet. The Benjamin Gilman scholarships provide opportunities for undergraduates to study abroad. A recent Gilman scholar in Istanbul, Turkey, said that I really want to encourage people from all walks of life in America to study abroad so that they can show foreigners what Americans can be and how diverse our country really is. Justin, who participated in a Fulbright, the State Department's flagship academic program, said, your government, your country has created these opportunities, and I encourage everyone to take them up for the challenge and to pursue it because this program, the Fulbright program specifically, changed my life. I want to make sure that we share that with as many people as possible. So if you take one thing away from today, I want it to be that international experiences are something that you too can have. You can have it by volunteering with Global Ties Alabama and meeting people who come your way, but you can also have it by looking into the State Department's exchange programs and applying for some of these opportunities yourself. And should you be interested in a career in the State Department or the Foreign Service, I have to say we can't get you in quickly enough. Diplomats come from everywhere, from Alabama to Alaska, from rural towns to urban areas, from all walks of life. The State Department strives to create a foreign service that represents America. It's not a club that you have to have a key to join. Alan will tell you more about this, but I believe that the main criteria for becoming a foreign service officer includes a few things: a lifelong desire to learn, respect for all humans and human rights, and a passion for travel. Of course, there's also a test you have to pass, but they do let you take that over again and again. So while the Foreign Service has always strived for a diverse workforce, we haven't always been successful in reaching this goal. We must change it if we are to be successful in an increasingly complex world. In fact, our Secretary of State, when testifying in Congress on this very topic, said, it's as though we're going into the whole diplomacy issue with our one hand tied behind our backs. Because for our country, our diversity is a strength, And if we're not taking full advantage of that in the State Department and other foreign affairs agencies, then we're not taking advantage of our full capacity and power to be a country of influence. So Secretary Blinken said that I've made increasing diversity, equity, and inclusion in the State Department to be my top priority. Not only because our diplomacy is strongest when our workforce reflects our nation's diversity, but also to create an environment where all our people are treated with dignity and respect. Creating a workplace and community that reflects our principles and stands firm against hate is up to all of us. Well, we have several longstanding partnerships with minority-serving institutions and historically Black colleges and universities because we know that the engagement only enriches our exchange programs and workforce. We want to do better. We need to do better. And through partnerships with private sector organizations like Global Ties Alabama, we are working to more fully realize our goals. We want to bridge communication gaps and barriers that might stand in the way of students getting involved in exchange programs, international affairs, and foreign service careers. You too have a seat at this table. Whether it is participating in an international exchange program yourself, pursuing a career in the foreign service, you can be a part of the work. You will hear from many inspiring young people and established leaders about their own personal stories. And I'd like to give a special shout out to one of these leaders, Elena Henry, 2017 emerging leader and former Global Ties Alabama intern. I have heard her relate her personal journey, and it is sure to inspire. So that's what I wanted to tell you today, but I'm also available in case anyone has some questions. Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you so much, Stacy. And please, if you have questions, please enter to the chat. I'll probably begin with, besides COVID being our #1 challenge over the last year, Stacy, what other challenges do you see in the international diplomacy area that might be addressed during this institute, but that you might be able to share with us?
Well, I think one of the things and one of the ways that Global Ties can work with us specifically is this whole notion of having America be more engaged again with the world. It's just so important, as I listed all these different things that cannot be solved by one country alone. We really need to have cooperation, alliances, and prioritize what are the most important things. And that's why, with all the things going on in the world, climate change, migration issues, human rights, these are the issues that have been prioritized by the Biden administration because they're keen to sort of everybody's life and well-being. So those are the things that we want to work on, and we want to have ideas and people cooperating and building these kind of coalitions beyond just our own country, extending to other parts of the world to tackle these issues.
Thank you very much. Any additional questions? I know that this is our opening plenary, and Stacy, you have just shared a wealth of information about the Department of State, probably the first time many of our audience members have ever heard. So we thank you so much for being with us. I don't see any additional questions. So we just want to, again, thank you so much for being our lead speaker today as we open the Reach HBCU Global Institute. At this time, I will move on in terms of our session. So many of us have been reflecting about 2020, and it takes time for us to think about the goodness of 2020. I've already hinted at the resilience that our organization, our team has experienced, but one of the good things, maybe great things about 2020 was my meeting Rihanna Miller. And I need to really appreciate Alabama A&M for their International Festival of 2020. And I met this young, energetic person. I thought I had energy, but I am getting seasoned more and more. And so I think some of that energy has transitioned to our co-lead, Rihanna Miller. So I'm delighted that Rihanna will serve as the opening session plenary moderator. Rihanna is originally from Anchorage, Alaska. So that really blew my mind. Anchorage, Alaska in Huntsville, Alabama. But that's what happens at HBCUs. She is an investor, developer, realtor. She specializes in first-time home buying, residential buying. And when I called her this morning just to give her a little pep talk, what was interesting, she was already doing a showing with one of her clients. And this had to be about 8 o'clock this morning. As an entrepreneur, she owns businesses in Maryland and the District of Columbia. Prior to becoming a realtor, she worked as the director of the public-private partnerships at Susu, a DC-based financial technology firm. And I can't wait for you all to attend the session where we have more discussion about Susu, because I grew up knowing Susu in my home. My family is from the Caribbean. And I said, there's no way this is now a professional organization in Washington, D.C. But nonetheless, there's a lot for all of us. We're all lifetime learners. She was honored to be a Gilman Scholar through the Duke University program on global health issues in South Africa. And that was obviously after her graduation from Alabama A&M, where she received her BA in political science. While studying in South Africa, she completed published research on access to healthcare for populations living in rural areas. And she didn't even know about COVID, how relevant that topic is. She served as the 2019-2020 Gilman Alumni Ambassador through the U.S. Department of State. And I could go on and on and on, but you will get to experience Rihanna during the next couple of days. So Rihanna, I'm delighted that you are my co-lead, my partner, and that you will be moderating our opening plenary. Rihanna?
Well, the flattery, that's what a great way to start a Tuesday. Thank you so much, Jackie. I appreciate it. And thank you so much, Stacy, for your opening remarks. I'm very happy to be here, very happy to work with you guys over the next few days. So please, 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 students, you know how this goes. Don't be afraid to raise your hands, ask questions, get involved. We have brought an amazing lineup of speakers to assist you all, and they are ready to give their knowledge on these sessions. They are ready to answer your questions. And I am extremely excited to begin this process with you all. This 3-day conference, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So what we are trying to do is, I know you guys are probably a little zoomed out. Some people have been on Zoom sessions for the last year, your school, meetings with family. I know people had Thanksgiving Zooms. I think people were in church for Easter. I was driving around, I saw some church hats. So it's kind of where, as we start to emerge, we are still on this Zoom session. So we are going to be very open. I want this to be a conversation. Like if you go into your professor's office and ask them to bump that C up to a B, that type of conversation is what we're having. We want to be able to give you all that knowledge that we have over the years, collectively gathered, for you all to get out into the world and become global citizens. And so a bit how I got here very quickly before I introduce our next speaker is I was a student at Alabama A&M, as Jackie said, coming from Alaska, Anchorage, Alaska. So I was given a scholarship and I said, okay, I had never been to Alabama. I think my knowledge on Alabama just kind of stopped at civil rights. And then I hadn't really thought much of it since then, Alaska being so far away. And my first day in Alabama, my mother and I got off the plane and it was 105 degrees in Huntsville that day. So coming from Alaska into 105 degrees, I said, this is going to be a long 4 years. The walk to get my luggage in the Alabama heat is something I will never forget. And so since that day, being at Alabama A&M was one of the best decisions I made going to an HBCU. I was able to meet amazing friends. I was able to become a part of a sorority. Shout out to any AKAs that are on the call today. I'm sorry, it's, with Kamala, we've been a bit excited this year. So I was able to not only just engage in student clubs and activities, but I had an amazing chairperson that sat me down and said, Rihanna, if your minor is international relations, I think you should study abroad over the summer. And I said, well, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? I can't afford it. He said, figure it out. And I said, do you think A&M can pay for it? He said, absolutely not. I said, okay, just in case. So I walked down, I went to the registrar's office, I went to the financial aid office, and anybody that attends an HBCU, sometimes you get that runaround. So I ran around campus for a week, asking every single person where I could get funding to study abroad. I said, I know I want to go abroad. They're like, oh, baby, yeah, right. I need a raise. And, I had this whole ordeal. So I was feeling discouraged. I went to, at the time, Alabama A&M had an international studies office. I went down, I knocked on the door. I said, please help me study internationally, literally knocking down doors. The doctor at the time said, okay, I'm going to pass you along to my assistant. She can help you. Miss Mary, wherever she is to this day, I credit her for so much. She not only helped me find the program for Duke over the summer. I said, I don't know about a semester. I have a lot going on. I want to join a sorority. I want to be with my friends. I want to have a good time. I'm a senior. I'm going to be a senior next year. She said, okay, how about a summer program? How about something that is, 6 to 8 weeks? And I said, okay, I can be away from, my life for 6 to 8 weeks. I found this amazing program through Duke University, as Jackie said, where I was literally in Africa, not the beautiful, Johannesburg. I thought I was going to the beaches, just gonna, yeah, South Africa looks great. It looks like Miami. Negative. I was in the villages. I had to walk to get my water 3 miles when I did my homestay. I actually, my homestay parents asked me to kill a chicken with a butter. That led me to becoming vegan. I struggle with my veganism. Sometimes I have fish. But however, it led to this one experience of 6 weeks in South Africa, doing research and learning about global health issues. And that was the first time I had done actual research and learning the research formats. I love my institution at A&M, but sometimes the teachers don't have the capacity to teach you. They don't, they have a lot of different things going on, a lot of different students. So this is where I learned different things in terms of reporting, in terms of gathering evidence and the format of a research paper, all in Africa, while actually getting chased by Pumbaa. I call them Pumbaa, but I was getting chased by animals in the middle of nowhere, conducting research and doing homestays and sleeping in a hut. I mean, I never thought I would sleep in a hut, but 4 days. I was actually, trying to find electricity, climbing on top of mountains to call my mom in the middle of nowhere. So and there were times that I cried. There were times that I wanted to go home. I asked my mom to call Duke so they can airlift me out of there and arrange a flight. I wanted to come home. There were times where it was the best days of my life, but it was also dealing with the program I was dealing with, global health issues. I met patients every day that were HIV positive and were actually dying of AIDS and dying of malaria. And we were there observing, walking through clinics, walking with healthcare workers, looking at the total state of South Africa and the global health issues. And now, like Jackie said, with COVID, it's just my experience is much, much more relevant. But through that experience, after I returned, I got back and said, this is something that HBCU students should be exposed to, but it shouldn't be that difficult. We shouldn't have to get a runaround for 2 weeks We shouldn't have to not know what our experience abroad is going to be like. We should have people, we should have a system, we should have a network where we all work together to help get exposure to these programs. So for the last, that was in 2012. So for the last 9 years, I have been talking with my fellow exchange alumni, and exchange alumni is a term you guys are going to hear for the next 3 days. Exchange alumni means that anybody that did a U.S. Department of State sponsored program. That includes the Fulbright Scholarship, that includes the Peace Corps, that includes the Gilman Scholarship, that includes Boren Scholarship, which is a fellowship for critical languages. And so if there's a wealth of international programs, then I will, if you, later on, we'll go ahead and make sure we send you guys all those resources. But I wanted to just highlight, through being an exchange alumni, I was still living in Alabama. I was flying up to DC to go to free conferences, to meet with people like we'll hear from a little bit later, Mr. Alan DeBose. I was meeting with diplomats and residents just to sit down and learn about the State Department, learn about careers, learn about the structures. Through that, I was able to have mentors. One woman said, hey, you asked some great questions. And I asked her one day, she was a Foreign Service officer for the State Department giving a presentation on the careers. I said, what exactly did you do in the State Department? She said, well, I'm a management officer, and part of my job as a management officer, one cool thing I did was for 4 years, I was in Dubai and I served as the VIP. Whenever a VIP would visit Dubai, she was the one at the embassy that coordinated all of that real estate. She was making sure those people had the correct hotels. And if it was a long stay, she said, I got to book Obama's hotel. And I said, you're telling me the federal government pays you to book hotels and find real estate for important people in Dubai? That's what you do? She's like, absolutely. So I would love for you guys to hear a session a little bit later as Aquania S. Kanar will be on to talk about Money Power Hour. But I just say that all to say, through that one experience studying abroad, since 9 years has led me to where I am today, and so grateful to be talking to you all, sharing this knowledge. And I'm very, very, very excited to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Ezel. He is has a very amazing background. And so what we're going to go ahead and do is I would love, Dr. Ezel, for you to speak briefly about your background, introduce yourself, and just kind of talk about what you do and what your work entails. And then we'll go ahead and ask a few questions and keep going.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. This is exciting. Anything dealing with HBCUs, I'm all smiles. To be honest with you, I took my tie off. I said, okay, I can't. This is not going to be a formal formal morning. So let me just relax a little bit. Daryl Ezel, I serve as the Director for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Hudson Alpha Institute for Biotechnology here in Huntsville, Alabama. Hudson Alpha is located in Cummings Research Park. Cummings Research Park is the second largest research park in the US and the fourth largest in the world. The great thing about it is on a day-to-day, I get a chance to work with some amazing faculty investigators, scientists, researchers, to advance genomic science and genomic medicine. Outside of that, it's really the question, okay, so how did you get to where you are right now? And I have to take a step back and say it started at Alabama A&M University. I'm a graduate, 2002, all right, 2002 graduate of Alabama A&M University. But I have to be honest, and I'm gonna keep it short, it wasn't really easy. I came into A&M in 1997, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and I wanted to do this, I wanted to do that, I wanted to become this, I wanted to become that, and I really, had to find my way. And in all transparency, after my freshman year, I met with my counselor, and my counselor said to me, just to be honest, Mr. Ezel, you need to sit down and figure out where you want to go and what you want to do. You have a 1.35 GPA. That's right, I saw that. So I'm sitting there with a 1.35 GPA on a 4.0 scale. And I said, okay, I need to figure out, what am I going to do? I'm studying, but I want to go overseas. I want to do an internship. So interestingly, I was living in Stevens Hall at the time, and Foster, which is next door to Stevens Hall, there was a big sign in front of the cafeteria, Walt Disney World College Program. Come and learn about diversity and inclusion and find your way. So I interviewed for the internship, and guess what? Gregory Taylor, who's still a mentor and a good friend of mine today, he interviewed me. I received the position. So I took 6 months off that next semester, and I went to Orlando, Florida, really Lake Buena Vista, Florida. Had a chance to work around folks from literally all over the world. I was placed at Epcot, and that's the world center of Disney World. And I wrote home. Yes, at that time we were writing home. I wrote home to Mom, and I said, Mom, I think I'm scratching on something, but I don't know what it is. And at that time, I wanted to be an accountant. That just went down the drain. Went back to Alabama University. Decided to take a psychology class over again, and declared psychology my major, and moved at 1.35 all the way up to a 3.2 GPA, graduating cum laude, and saying to myself, you know what? I've met these amazing folks. It's opened my eyes about where I can go and what I can really do. I think I want to go to Harvard. I think I want to go to Columbia, what have you. So I and other friends at A&M who were clustered in thinking about this type of stuff, we love poetry. So guess what? Had a chance to co-found the poetry club with, at the time, Miss Alabama A&M University, Crystal Balls. So we became the co-founders of the poetry club, which is still alive today on the campus and doing amazing, amazing work, bringing students together. Joined the SGA, met some great folks there, decided to pledge Kappa Alpha Psi, Gamma Phi chapter, and listen to my mentors and my advisors. So at that time, I said, I want to go to The Ohio State University and become a psychologist. And in my first semester of my senior year, 9/11 takes place. And 9/11 was a devastating event, a terrorist attack here on American soil. And I said to myself, you know what? I want to figure out how to use this psychology degree to the benefit to resolve conflicts, because I have this amazing experience at Disney working around folks from different cultures and groups and in communities. But how can I use it? And I looked through my stack of acceptance letters, and I saw one from Columbia University and Union Theological Seminary. And I said, you know what? I want to study religion and ethics. So I trekked on to Union Theological Seminary, finishing a master's in systematic theology. And by 2004, I decided to take a summer off because, when you get up there, people say, hey, take a summer off. I'm like, okay, I'm taking summer off. And I learned about Russ College's study abroad program. In Russ College, which is based in Holly Springs, Mississippi, HBCU, shout out, they were taking students to Gambia, Senegal, and Morocco. And I hitched a ride. And in hitching that ride, I said, well, I looked at my files again. I applied for a PhD program, 3 PhD programs in England. I got one at the University of Birmingham in Birmingham, England, not Alabama, but Birmingham, England. And I said, you know what? The only thing that they're asking for is pre-doctoral research. So I said, you know what? I'm going over to Gambia, and I'm going to work this pre-doctoral research proposal out. Went over, finished it up with the help of an HBCU, studying at Cheikh Anta Diop University in Senegal, Dakar. And I said, man, I'm overseas. And this is the first time I'm overseas, the first time I ever had a passport. And I'm reflecting, I'm like, just a few years ago, I had a 1.35 GPA, and now I'm in Casablanca. I'm in Banjul. I'm walking through the markets, and I understand your experience when you're out and about and you're in this rural area and you're trying to figure it out. So I'm on the plane coming back, and I say to myself, okay, I received acceptance to the University of Birmingham in England. I'm going over. I've really never been overseas per se to live, but my experience in Birmingham, England changed my life. It changed my mind, because at Union in New York, I'm studying systematic theology and conflict resolution. In England, I'm actually merging this together and I'm studying religion and international affairs with some amazing scholars. And it led to me taking, really being accepted to the US Department of State through the Foreign Affairs Careers Intern Program in 2007. Had a chance to work in the Office of Peacekeeping, Sanctions, and Counterterrorism. I think they've changed the name now, but it's in the Office of International Organizational Affairs. Wonderful mentors is Harry K. Thomas, Ambassador Harry K. Thomas, and now she's the U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Ambassador Linda Thomas Greenfield, and Teddy Taylor and others who were African American, who saw young interns and pulled us to the side for the Thursday luncheon group and to talk to us in visiting with historic members of the Foreign Service Academy. And I said to myself, I think I may want to do the Foreign Service, but also was drawn to academia. And after finishing up my PhD at the University of Birmingham, I decided to go on to LSU to teach international relations, conflict resolution, and counterterrorism, theories in counterterrorism for a few years, also teaching at Tulane. But as most students from HBCU, the HBCU is still calling. You're trying to figure out, okay, how can I make my way back to, the land, in a sense, to engage? And I was able to do so. I was able to do so by way of joining the board of trustees at Russ College, and then later leaving LSU and moving to California to work with an amazing team to build a new university from scratch with a $50 million gift from David C. Lincoln. The point I'm making is that my international experience had a chance to shape my current station, in a sense. Have I left international affairs? Absolutely not. It's in me. I'm a global citizen. And the point that I want to make to you all is that, yes, you're a global citizen, but you're also a global ambassador. You can do it. Anything that you put your mind to, and I'm sure you've heard this over and over and over and over again, you can do it. And just because the representation, for example, in the Foreign Service and other ranks of civil service, it may not be as diverse right now, right? What we know is that the world is an extremely diverse place, and the world is calling you into those spaces. So I challenge you. I challenge you to go. I challenge you to sit with it. I challenge you to wrestle with experiences. I challenge you to go through cultural shock. And yes, cultural shock is real when you're in some countries, but the world is waiting for you. Just as jazz music is a part of public diplomacy, global public diplomacy, our story as well is a part of that as well. So I'm going to take a step back, Brianna, and if there are questions, I'm delighted to answer, and I hope I kind of hit some of the points that you all were looking for.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zell. That was an amazing story. It's great to have another fellow A&M alum always, and just thank you for all of the work that you've done. And so I want to open it up to the chat. Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Zell before we go on to the next speaker? I'll wait for a second. I'll wait about 15 seconds. Okay. All right. Well, at any time, feel free. We still have some time left at the end of the session. So if you all do have questions throughout, feel free to just put them in the chat. And at the end, we will do a Q&A, and all of our speakers can answer any questions that you guys have. So next, I am proud to announce our next speaker is Mr. Alan DeBose. And he is currently the diplomat in residence for the South region. And so those folks in Alabama, he covers all of that state. And so I am very excited to just kind of let you guys in on how we met. Last year, Alabama A&M, the School of Business, had an international day. And at this international day, I'm not sure if you all know, Dr. Zhang put it on. It was great. There was food. There was just different booths. And students were able to get exposure to different cultures and things like that. We had some people, I think, on the call that were actually there, which is great to see. I see your guys' names. So that is where I met the fabulous Mrs. Shipe, and that is where I met Alan. They were both speaking, and there I shared my Gilman experience with the students. And so since then, I'm very, very excited to have him on here, because when you guys have questions about what it means to be a diplomat, a career, State Department, and just working abroad, this is your guy. This is who it is his part of his career to help you all through the process of what it looks like to have a career at the State Department. So I am proud to have next Mr. Alan DeBose to talk a little bit about his experience and then talk a little bit about what careers at the State Department look like.
Thank you for having me, and thank you to everybody at Global Ties Alabama for having me, giving me this opportunity to talk to the students and the administrators and everybody else. One of the advantages of not going first is I get to listen to other people talk, and I was saying, oh, that reminds me of this, and that reminds me of that. So, you know, I went the other way. I was born in Panama City, and my father was in the Air Force, and he dragged me all the way up to Fairbanks, Alaska. So, you know, that shock, you talk about getting off the jet in 100-degree heat. Imagine getting off the jet and it's 20 below. So there's some shock in any case. So let me go through kind of quickly my background, and I'll talk a little bit about the Foreign Service as well, the U.S. Foreign Service. My background is, my father was in the Air Force, so we traveled a lot domestically, and that gave me opportunities that a lot of people haven't had, because I got to see different things. I was living different places. They were all domestic. So when he served overseas, the family stayed behind. So I kind of missed out on that part, but I got in the habit of just recognizing change and adapting to change. And that's a theme that is you're going to see consistent throughout international travel, foreign affairs, and definitely the U.S. Foreign Service, is the ability to adapt to change. So sometimes change is exactly how you want it, and other times you don't have much choice. In my case, I graduated, got my MBA in economics and finance, and I wanted to go make money. So after I got my MBA, I was looking for jobs where I could make money. Started off with IBM working in finance, but went somewhere else, went to Chicago, worked for a different company. I worked for several different companies that don't exist today because they got bought out by someone else, but you might recognize Bloomberg. I worked for a company before Bloomberg. They were bought out by Bloomberg. But in any case, I was moving along and I noticed a couple of things. One is I wanted to make money, but I wasn't necessarily still doing what I wanted to do. And the second thing was I got bored so easily. Sometimes I was leaving, but I really wasn't in a better station. I was just changed. That was attractive to me. And I ended up with a company called Iridium LLC, which was a startup satellite telecommunications company. They raised $6.5 billion. I was employee number 60. We grew to 600. I started as the finance department, and ended up in 5 years moving up to one of the business operations manager with responsibility for North America. I had $500,000 in stock options, and I was planning on retiring by the time I was about 50 years old, and we went bankrupt. I had useless paper, no job, a baby, and a mortgage. So as you learn in life, as you get older, you're going to see, what do you do when your back's to the wall? And the answer is, first, you get sanctuary, meaning you go to a safe place and figure out what you're going to do. Physically, that meant for us, South Florida. So I went down to South Florida and started my own business down there. And while I was there, I had traveled working with Iridium overseas and Latin America mostly, gotten some Spanish. And I realized there was a niche in South Florida that I could work with people who were immigrants from Latin America and help them get their businesses started in the South Florida area. However, I also thought, but I'm here and I get tired of being in any one place. And I was looking on the internet and I saw an ad by Colin Powell, who was Secretary of State at the time. And he said, we're looking for administrators in the U.S. Foreign Service. And I thought to myself, I'm an administrator. Let me read this. So I did what it told me to do. Go to careers.state.gov. And while I was at careers.state.gov, I absorbed every bit of information I could. It's a fantastic site, careers.state.gov. And I took a quiz there where I put in my interest, and it gave a readout that said, here's how we think you fit if you join the U.S. Foreign Service. And it had a match that was out of this world, like you're a management officer type. Your personality fits management. So I made the decision sitting right there. I think I want to do this for a career. But I was married. So you know what I did? I said, Marcella, would you come here for a second and look over my shoulder? And I explained everything to her. She read it. And then that was my spouse, if you're wondering. And she said, yeah, let's try it. So within 3 hours of me learning this information, I had decided this is what I wanted to do. And I started the process of taking the test, which is step one to become a U.S. Foreign Service officer or diplomat, and never looked back. And it was a challenging experience, but a great experience. I joined in 2005 and have had a wonderful career to this point. And what I want to do now is ensure we find the best and brightest who are going to be taking care of our embassies and consulates overseas, because I'm heading to retirement in a few years and I plan on traveling internationally and I don't want any problems. So I need to make sure people from Alabama and or any of these other HBCUs are going to take care of me if I lose my passport in Spain. So with that said, one theme that you saw with us is a lot of us don't grow up in this world. If you go from DC to Boston and just talk to people, they know who State Department is. They have family members. They have friends. They're going to school with them. They know about it. They've been there. We tend not to be like that. And so many times, the first time we even connect foreign service with the word diplomat is when we're in college and listening to a program like this. Well, this is an opportunity for everybody to start connecting in their brains and start realizing I have skills that can be used in U.S. Foreign Service, and I can have a fantastic career where it's a win-win for everybody. I get to have a fantastic career, and also I am truly serving the government and our people, U.S. citizens. So just for clarification, in the Department of State, we have civil servants and U.S. Foreign Service officers. So the Foreign Service is cut out, well, not cut out, it is within the Department of State. So that role and function is the part of the Department of State that serves at our embassies and consulates overseas. So when we talk about the diplomats, those are the ones who normally spend thirds of their careers overseas. And these are the ones who always have the stories about, well, when I was here, here's what happened. So we have a window of opportunity that we many times don't know is going on because we don't see the forest for the trees. There has been massive social unrest over the last year and a half publicly in the United States. And right now, a lot of organizations are actually putting money and effort behind theory. US State Department, Secretary Blinken has made it very, very clear that he wants diversity within our US Foreign Service. He wants the US Foreign Service to represent the United States and what the US is, and not just be cookie cutter of any one group or people from any certain universities. This is a window that may or may not be there in the future that we need to take advantage of. We need to do whatever we need to do to be able to take advantage of these opportunities, be they with the US Foreign Service, federal government, private industry, or as entrepreneurs. The bottom line is use whatever skills you have and progress. I saw one of the comments were asking about planning things differently in college, or how do I do this? How do I do that? And every week I get questions about, should I major in this or minor in this? What should I do? And my answer is always, do what you want to do, just be good at it. And don't do nothing. There's no reason for anybody to ever say, I don't have anything to do, because you can find things to do to improve yourself all the time. We have a test-in process, and throughout the entire process from soup to nuts, you could be a biology major and want to be a political officer and have zero background as a political officer, because that's what they're not judging you on. They're judging the candidates on what we call 13 dimensions. And those 13 dimensions you can find at careers.state.gov. And I'm not going to read them all, but they include things like adaptability, judgment, leadership, communication, analysis. The bottom line is it costs Uncle Sam a whole lot of money, like over $700,000 to send one of us overseas for a 3-year tour. So we hit the ground running. And when we hit the ground running, we're expected to be leaders. We're expected to be supervisors. And since we're expected to hit the ground running, that means they're going to educate us. We have our own school called Foreign Service Institute. So if you are that biology major who doesn't speak any foreign language, but you have demonstrated that you have the skills it takes to learn and to lead, we will teach you Spanish, we will teach you French, we will teach you Nepali, whatever you need to be able to be successful, and we will give you the courses you need for your political assignment, and then we ship you overseas, and now you got to do it. And you start doing that. And that's why cultural adaptability is so important, is being able to adapt, because you will be left on an island sometimes, and you will have to exercise good judgment to decide, what can I do? And what do I need to do? And what is the best thing to do? So when I'm talking this way, I'm going to hand the floor over in just a moment. I just want to get a theme. Don't worry too much about the micro at this stage. Look at the macro. And what I mean by the macro is, don't start narrowing down exactly what you want to do if you're looking at government service. This is the point in your lives when you should be casting a wide umbrella, seeing what's out there. Now, all these programs you're going to hear about are extremely competitive. So don't get your nose out of joint if you don't get the internship you don't want, but you got another one. I talked to someone who got an internship with the IRS and didn't get one at state. And I said, what's the problem? And he said, well, I wanted to be in state. I said, well, you may in the future, but you got an internship at the IRS. 50% of what you're going to learn during this internship is applicable to any civil service job, and it's going to help you maybe get a foreign service job. So it's a stepping stone process at this point. Keep a wide net. And you can do that also by looking at usajobs.gov. So usajobs.gov is where you will find federal internships and full-time jobs listed all the time. So if you go to careers.gov, that is State Department, you'll find links to USA Jobs for State Department. But if you go straight to USA Jobs, you can find them for any agency. And so you should go in, start doing some searches, see what's out there, see what interests you, and put in ticklers. So when one of these opportunities opens up, you'll get notified and you'll read the vacancy announcement. If you're ready to graduate, you can start thinking about this as a job. If you're freshman, sophomore, somewhere around there, you can start to read what they're looking for, and you can plan the last couple of years of your education based on, what they're looking for. So the number one takeaway is, don't do nothing. What would I do differently if I were in college is I wouldn't have been sitting around talking to people, just listening to what their experience was. I'd be doing my research, talking to as many people as possible, trying different opportunities, taking some risks, seeing what works or may not work. Might not be that comfortable, like being somewhere where you have to walk 3 miles to get water. It might not be the most comfortable experience, but now you're better for it. And now you have some experiences where something really hard comes up. You're going to think, well, okay, well, let me go do it. You're not going to be sitting there whining about, oh, I have to do this. This is painful. It's not what I wanted. And that's where everybody needs to get to in their mindset, because I'm telling you, there are so many opportunities at this time in history for people who look like us, but we have to take advantage, because they are not just looking for people who look like us. They're looking for people who look like us, who are competent, who are skilled, who are ready to take whatever opportunity is given to them and maximize those. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Mr. DeBose. That was amazing. So that was the takeaway for you all. Do something. Do something that you want to do. And I think what's really important to remember, as he was highlighting, no matter your major, no matter what you're studying, or if you've changed your major 4 times, or if you're set on saying, this is what I want to do, just know that there are opportunities for whatever you are passionate about. If you are looking at, oh, I think I would like to be a mechanical engineer, look at places in Africa that are working with engineering firms, and maybe in Morocco, where there's a lot of different opportunities no matter your major. If you're a food science major, that's huge. That's huge. There's opportunities for food science everywhere in the world, such as in the Caribbean and in Mexico. And I know I get my avocados from Mexico, you know, I definitely do. So there's a lot of different things that you can experience. That takeaway is not, don't feel pressured to change your major. Don't feel pressured to have a timeline on what you're doing. Continue to reach after whatever goals you've set. And if you want to incorporate that into have an international experience, do that. But I highly suggest studying abroad, and there are programs out there for whatever you guys are currently studying. So remain true to yourself. Thank you so much for that speech. That was great. And so next, what we are going to do, before I introduce our next speaker, I just want to let you guys know that I do see your questions in the chat box, and we're going to save that for the last 15 minutes of the session to go over those questions, and we can go ahead and get those answered for you guys. So next, I am proud to present Ms. Elena Henry, who is currently in London working at the British Embassy, and I will let her talk a little bit about her background and why she is here today. So thank you so much for being here, Elena, and I'm going to hand over the floor to you.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. First of all, I'm really excited to be a part of this forum because I'm a big supporter of HBCU students getting involved in international affairs and having global careers because first of all, the world needs people that look like us to represent them. And I think that's one of the key things that I've learned throughout my career experience. So I'll talk a little bit about my story and then a couple of lessons that I learned along the way. So first, I'm from South Florida, so West Palm Beach, Florida originally. And I went to Oakwood University, which is an HBCU in Huntsville, Alabama. And while I was there, I started off as a psychology major. And I don't know, as the classes went on, I didn't really feel that psychology was for me. I switched to social work, actually, as a social work major. And actually, I think one of my former professors, Miss Helen Fishel, is actually on the Zoom call here. And I went to her basically saying, you know, look, I know social workers are normally known for taking away children out of homes. I don't want to do any of that. And I want to do something more international. So how can I tie the two together? And this is kind of one of the lessons I learned, that any career, just like Mr. Alan DuBose said, any career and any major can be international. Then I just decided, okay, well, you know, I went to her and she told me, well, I have an internship for you. And that's when I was connected with Global Ties Alabama. And that's actually where my mind opened up. The passion for having a global career and just being able to network and meet people from all over the world right here in the United States. That's where that was realized. And so as an intern, I planned the international exchange programs. I was also their former emerging leader. I think it was 2015, 2016, if I'm correct. And met with ambassadors and other State Department officials as well, and just realized, I think this is where I want to go. This is the route that I want to take. I want to have a global career. From Oakwood, I graduated and went on to do my master's program, master's in social work, but emphasis on international human rights law, international affairs, and policy. And so from there, I said, well, I have all these degrees. I have this degree now. I'm also a dual citizen. What can I do? And so I decided to apply both for the Department of State and then also some career opportunities within DC. And so the door opened up and I was able to work at the British Embassy in Washington, DC. And Rihanna, I think you mentioned meeting one of the management officials that deal with like when VIPs come to different countries and, you know, they book the hotels over and so on. That's actually what I did for the VIPs here in London. So if a royal family member came to the United States, or any ministers or the prime minister himself or herself at that time came to the United States, I would make sure that all their programs are handled. And so that gave me the opportunity to not only network with VIP officials here in London, but then also in the US, because I was booking meetings in the White House and State Department, the Pentagon. And so just really, really interesting experiences that I've had so far. and also planning major events for the British Embassy as well. And that's where we, again, invited very senior officials, US officials from different places like the White House, State Department, so forth and so on. And so from there, I was enjoying my experience, enjoying being in DC, and I think working at the British Embassy really opened my eyes to the different types of careers that I could have. And so I decided, well, as a dual citizen, maybe I could apply for, their kind of foreign affairs program. And so I did, and I was able to get a job, and I'm working here as a ministerial engagement officer and working mainly on climate change. And the UK is hosting the United Nations COP26 summit, so I'm working on that as well. And so it's just been a great experience for me so far. And I have a couple of lessons that I would like to share for all of you, because when I went to Oakwood, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had no idea where I would go, but I knew that I wanted to have a global career, and I wanted to be a global citizen. And so a couple of lessons that I want to just share with you. First, be open to changing your career course. I didn't, at first, when I was a psychology major, I was thinking that I wanted to be a marriage and family therapist, and I thought that's what I wanted to do. But once I interned with Global Ties Alabama, and I started to realize the importance of just having a global career and networking with people on a global scale, I decided to change my course. And at first, of course, change is something where it seems easy. It's easier said than done. And so as I experienced that, I started to shift my thinking on my career. And so, again, I think that ties also into any career and anything, any major. It can be international. And that's what I learned as well. Another lesson that I learned is taking advantage of opportunities that are presented to you, but also with an open mind and a smile. So yes, you take those opportunities, you walk through those doors, but having an open mind and a smile allows you to learn from the experiences that you're introduced. When I went to Global Ties Alabama, I wasn't sure exactly what Global Ties was and what they do, and I wasn't even familiar with the Department of State. But as I went as an intern and was able to, network with people and went to different meetings and really opened my mind to, the internship opportunities that was afforded to me, I did it with a smile and open mind, and I kept learning as I went along. And so I think that's what also led me to some of the successes that I have now, which leads me on to my other point. Continue becoming a lifelong student. No one knows everything. And honestly, I think the best way to learn more about the world around you is to travel, is to take those study abroad opportunities, is to intern with Global Ties Alabama, or take an internship at the State Department. Focus on those careers as well, because as we become lifelong students, not only learning more about the US, but also about other cultures and countries around us, I think it'll really help us to open our mind to, breaking down the stereotypes and the barriers that often we think about other cultures and other countries. And then last thing that I want to say is there is a poem that I remember. It's called No Man is an Island, and it's by John Donne, if I'm correct. But basically the poem talks about no one person being an island. And I think the same thing is for public diplomacy. No one country is an island either. We all learn from each other's cultures, each other's countries, and public diplomacy is a great way to build those bridges. And we can do that right here on US soil. So I would encourage everyone, no matter what career you think you want to do, no matter what major you are in, no matter where you are in the United States or even in the world, you can have a global career. It is possible. And I think one of the strong things that I will emphasize as an HBCU graduate is that I bring a certain diversity and inclusion to the table that opens up other conversations, that opens up other opportunities, and I can advocate for people who look like me and allow them to have a proper seat at the table. So I would encourage everyone on this call to really get involved as local. If you have to start off local, that's great. If you're able to study abroad and take those opportunities, that's great as well. But I would say get started right where you are, and you'll see those doors open up for you.
Amazing. I'm going to end that with a smile. But thank you so much, Elena. I did have one thing I wanted you to share. Can you tell the students and the audience a little bit more about your organization of the initiative at the British Embassy in DC last year? I would love for them to hear about that amazing work.
Yeah, sure. Okay, great. So at the British Embassy in Washington, I first understood that I wanted to be involved in diversity and inclusion initiatives. And so one of the initiatives there, they had different groups, and one of the groups was the minority ethnic group. And so I decided to join because I wanted to, I think before I came, there was only, I think that was like the first year that they celebrated Black History Month in the US for US Black History Month. And so I decided, no, we're definitely going to change that. I definitely want to make sure that Black History Month is something where the diplomats who are coming from London get to hear the experiences of Blacks in the US. And so I joined the team, and then I was asked to be the co-chair. And so I became the co-chair, and then eventually the chair of the group. And mind you, this group is for the entire US. So there's the embassy in Washington, but there's also different consulates in the US. So I was in charge of the entire US network. And so when the killing of George Floyd happened, the ambassador, who was a former UK representative for the UN, she pulled me aside and said, I would love for you to kind of help the entire US network get involved in understanding race relations. And mind you, that was a big task, but I was like, sure, I'll do it. Let's do it. So we hosted a conference call, which had, I think, over 300 people attend. I spoke and talked to them gave my remarks, helped them understand a little bit about the history of racism in the US. And I received overwhelming just emails of encouragement. And so I decided we need to take this a step forward. Talking is great, but we need to now put policies and plans in place so that we can ensure that people that come after us are able to have a fair chance at diversity and inclusion. And so what I did along with my group, and the group was about 40 diplomats and locally engaged staff, we built an action plan around the three pillars of educate, engage, and advocate. And so educate being, we provided a lot of resources on racism in the US, the history of racism, from TED Talks to books, just a lot of things that they can understand, and even some Netflix shows as well. And then the next step was engage. So after you've educated yourself, using that knowledge to engage in conversations that challenge racism, that challenge stereotypes, and that encourage more diversity and inclusion in thought and in action. And then finally, advocate. So advocate would be making sure that the senior level events that we plan, making sure that the speakers that we have, that they're diverse and inclusive, ensuring that, even in the hiring process for diplomats, ensuring that that is diverse as well. And the hiring process for locally engaged staff is diverse. And so from that action plan that we created with the help of my team, we were able to change policies and laws on how diplomats are interviewed and how the interview process goes, and then also how locally engaged staff were interviewed as well, and other policies, other overarching policies as well. And I think that was a big experience, and that opened my eyes to understanding that this topic of diversity and inclusion is very important. I think not only with George Floyd and what's happened with the killing of innocent Blacks, but I think just in general, people are more open to trying to incorporate more diversity and inclusion within the workforce. And again, I think that was an opportunity that I took with a smile. I didn't know how or where we were going to go and how we were going to do this, because it was a really big ask. But the ambassador was just like, she really wants to ensure that the US network has some policies and protocols that we can follow. And so myself and my team delivered. And ultimately, I think the policy plan went all the way back here in London. And there were senior level ministers and other senior level officials that emailed me and just thanking my team and I for publishing this. And so even now I get some emails sometimes from people just thanking us for the work that we did. So yeah, just walking through those doors with an open mind and a smile.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Elena. That was great. So I love that takeaway, of course, with a smile. I've been told I smile all the time. I've even been told I smile too much. And I said, not possible. There's no such thing as smiling too much. And I love the point that you had about changing careers and being okay with that. If you guys are logging on to the session, it's okay to fail. You'll be hearing all about my first year of law school and how much that I said first year, only year of law school. And as you know, law school is 3 years. I transitioned my entire career. I said, this isn't for me, came and got into international relations, but somehow I still use a little bit of that year of law school in real estate. So there's so many different ways to really create your own career and what that looks like. So don't be afraid to get out there and do it with a smile. And so next, for the last 14 minutes of our session, I'm going to go ahead and start with these questions. So speakers, please, if you would like to jump in, 2 of these questions at the end are for Dr. Ezell, but there is one question that we have from the chat. That is, what do you feel are some of the barriers for students from HBCUs being involved in studying/traveling abroad outside of the US? So what are some barriers for HBCU students in traveling and studying abroad? Does any speaker want to take that? And if not, I know.
I'll take a portion of that.
First,
I don't see barriers specific to students from HBCUs. And I think people are too quick to associate economic challenges or things like that with students from HBCUs. I'm talking about the students themselves. So barriers that I see in general for students, the biggest one is economic, not being able to afford to take an unpaid internship, or competing for as many things as possible because of their limited resources, or they have to make some money to be able to help the family. I think that's the biggest challenge I see with students in general. And what I would encourage those students to do, again, is look for opportunities that are as broad as possible. And if you find any, go ahead and take it and use it as a stepping stone, and don't narrow your focus too much. And also, if you can't get something internationally, it's not the end of the world. My firstborn did Teach for America in inner city St. Louis. Boy, you talk about a different culture than what she grew up in. So that helped her with her cultural adaptability, even though she wasn't living abroad.
great, thank you so much. When I went to grad school at American University here in DC, my master's is in international relations. And one of the things that I learned in grad school is something called domestic culture shock. It is a real thing. You have international culture shock when you're going into a completely different environment and culture, but you also have domestic culture shock, which varies from state to state, which varies from even sometimes communities. I live in DC, and my neighborhood is a little bit different than downtown DC. So I think that there's opportunities for that, which is something to be aware of and understand that culture shock is okay. It's normal. It's just about how you adapt, and it's about how you all move through life and move through these processes. And so if that hopefully answered that question, we have next a question for Dr. Ezell. It is, what changes in your mindset / habits did you make to change your GPA? So that's a great question. How did you bring that 1 point something around, I think it was 1.5 up to being a cum laude graduate?
Absolutely, yeah, it was 1.3. For me, and I speak about it gladly now. For me, it was the door of cultural exposure and exchange. Walt Disney World did it for me. We often kid around in my family and talk about the mountaintop experience, because everybody's like, how in the world? was like, it started with Walt Disney World, going down to Orlando, Lake Buena Vista, engaging, working, living among folks from different cultures, and understanding, you know what, we have some of the same things in common. And I said, you know what, I want to be around this. Like, I need to figure out how to go back to the Hill and sit down, you know, and put a plan together. And for me, it was the fact that I wanted to get back to the world. I wanted to get back to engagement and exposure. But someone put in the chat box about travel. Like, once you travel, it changes your whole mindset. And, you know, I was just in a place where I felt that I wasn't challenged as much. So I moved, in a sense, myself into spaces at A&M where I was challenged, you know, whether it was around Honor Society students before even joining the Honor Society, you know, just moving and sitting with them and talking to folks, Student Government Association, running for offices and things of that nature. So just moving my comfortable self into uncomfortable spaces. And in doing so, listening to others who had gone before me, you know, in class, but others who'd gone before me, and just putting myself up to challenges.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ezell. I did want to segue back to that last question. Elena actually has some more barriers that students can face studying abroad and in international situations. Go ahead, Elena.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to say a couple of things because as a former student of an HBCU, I think there are challenges that we face. However, these challenges we can overcome. So Dr. Du Bois mentioned, or Mr. Du Bois, sorry, mentioned finances. I also think another one is fear. The fear of being, you know, the fear of change, the fear of being in somewhere totally different, the fear of going to a country where maybe even your family members have never gone or have never even left the country. And so I think fear can really be a crippling thing. But one thing that I think can overcome fear is the understanding of being willing and open to be uncomfortable. And I think Dr. Zell just mentioned that, just being open to being uncomfortable, because I think the greatest way that we can grow, and if you understand how, you know, how plants and other things grow, they have to be sometimes in uncomfortable situations, or in order to like foster growth. And I think one of the things also is to open our minds to other opportunities and other ways of thinking and other ways of looking at the world around us. Because sometimes living in the US, we can have a closed mind on how the world operates. And so when you travel, and you get to visit how another person lives and get to understand, you know, how other people around the world live, you then can come up with your own conclusion on how the world around you is. So I think fear is a major factor. And I would just say, don't allow fear to hold you back from your growth. Be uncomfortable and continue to grow.
Thank you so much. I know that going to even as an adult, I've done solo travel and I've been scared, a little fear in my stomach. It's excitement and it's a little fear, but that just means that you're growing. Like Elena said, if you feel that kind of when you're working out, I see we have some student athletes on here. When you are at practice and you feel like you can't run one more suicide or go one more mile, that is when your body's changing. That is when your muscles are shaping and forming. That's when you're getting healthier. When you feel that pressure point that I can't do anymore, or I'm scared, or I don't want to do it, that is when you are expanding. That's when you're growing. So next we have another question, also for Dr. Ezell. They want to know, how many mentors do you have guiding you? And I think mentorship is very, very, very important. So I would love if you could speak briefly on that.
Absolutely. Guiding me, for example, right now, quite a few. It never stops when it comes to mentorship. I will say that through the journey, yes and no, as it relates to, you know, I've always, you know, had mentors. There were times when there were dark spaces, you know, when you're trying to figure it out. You're moving from what's considered to be one level to the next level. You're stretching, you know, you have to kind of stretch a bit to say, you know what, I actually see myself in that space and there's nobody else around me who looks like me that's in that space. And when you want to pick the phone up and call someone, they don't have experiences about that other space because you've reached this particular tier. And the reality is that you have to have faith and belief in yourself to go the distance. And guess what? When you get there, there are going to be a lot of folks who will support you. But I will say this as it relates to mentorship, understand how to utilize your mentor's time. That is extremely important. Don't call a meeting just to meet. And I learned when interning at the State Department, I was told by my mentor, said, look, when you go in, you have this much time, you ask these questions, you summarize this, you send that back to them, you say, thank you. I sent handwritten notes to those individuals. They're still my friends and confidants to this day. And I still call upon them. We're able to exchange and communicate. So understand that, you need to understand how to utilize your mentor's time. You have to listen. You need to follow up. Don't wait for someone to contact you. You contact them, not necessarily saying you be aggressive per se, and calling them every 5 minutes, but you make the first move because they have some information that you'd like to learn about. So just go the distance, stretch yourself, engage, make the first move. And most importantly, when it's time for you to serve as a mentor, serve as a mentor.
Can I piggyback real quickly? Because I talk to young people all the time and they're a little intimidated. And what I always say is, if you want to be a protege to a mentor, make it attractive to that mentor for you to be a protege. Well, what can I do for him? Most mentors our age are tired of technology. So we can get it done, but it takes us 5 hours to do anything. So if you just simply reach out, if you're going to ask them something, offer something you can do. And I'm telling you, low-hanging fruit is to help them in some way, shape, or form. Set up Zoom meetings for them, or edit presentations in PowerPoint, or something that they can get done, but it takes them a long time, and they will see the benefit of how you separate yourself from others.
Thank you so much. So while we still have you, we have about a few more minutes. We're just going to answer up one more question and then I'll go ahead and close this out. Mr. DeBose, can you actually answer a question from a student that is asking about what opportunities are there for recent graduates and where can we guide them?
I saw the question, and the first place you always want to go with the federal government is usajobs.gov. There is one program called the Pathways Recent Graduate Program. This is a federal program. State Department participates in this, and you have to be within 2 years of graduating. And this is an opportunity for people to get these pathways paid internships. And if they finish the program and do well, then they can compete for full-time jobs and non-competitive, meaning that they're not open to the world. They're limited to people who are just in the government. So you're competing against a smaller pool. Also, there are fellowships that are available. As you go to careers.state.gov, you'll read about Wrangle, Pickering fellowships, Foreign Affairs Information Technology, and other agencies have their own programs. But many times people assume that these people who are competing are all high school seniors going on to get a master's degree, when a high percentage of them have already graduated and they're out volunteering or working, and they're going back to get a fellowship at that point. And so careers.state.gov for State Department opportunities, usajobs.gov for all the federal government opportunities.
Great, thank you so much. And after the conference, if you guys would like to visit the website again, we will have the resources up with all of this amazing information over the next 3 days. So you guys can always have that to access. So I wanted to, before we close out, say thank you so much to the Global Ties intern, Ms. Kezia Daniel, for all of her facilitation and all of her work as we have put on this conference and for the Zoom. I may be 30, but I still don't understand Zoom. I was raised by a baby boomer, so I'm a little technology deprived as well. So it's not just with some older folks. So we definitely had to test the Zoom for me prior to. So I just wanted to, of course, again, say thank you to Kezia. Thank you to all our speakers. Thank you to Stacy. Thank you to Alan. Thank you to Daryl. Thank you to Elena. And thank you to Jackie for being a wonderful co-host. And so for the next session that we have coming up in 30 minutes, you guys will exit out and you can be in the waiting room if you guys would like to join us today. The session that we have is the GPI, the Global Ties Institute. We'll be learning about world religions, and that will be very, very exciting. And then the next session we have a little bit later today will be hearing from global leaders in the Caribbean and African diaspora. So that'll be exciting. If you guys throughout the conference would like to hop on and hop off to any sessions that interest you, that is how we designed it. You don't have to attend every single session. But however, I know some of you are here and interested in wondering about those student stipends. So we will also put this in the follow-up. But there are some opportunities for you guys to win student stipends, such as to the student who attends the most sessions. Also to the student who asks the most questions to speakers. And I have someone logging all of this info and watching every single session. And then we also have an opportunity for a student to actually share with us, the student who is in a session and able to, and the student who is in a session, oh, I'm gonna go ahead and mute. A student who is in the session and is able to share their experience and what they would like, their interest in traveling abroad and globally. We want you guys to also engage. We want to hear from the students. And then the last opportunity to win a student stipend will be a follow-on essay contest. And you can go on the website and register for that. So that will be very, very exciting. Can you guys please mute? Okay, that's no problem. So thank you very much for joining the opening plenary. And we are excited to have you. Like I said, thank you to the speakers. And I hope to see you guys over the next 3 days. And please let us know if you have any questions. We are here for a resource. We are here to help guide you guys. We are here to listen to you all. And we are here to help you become great global citizens that we know you all can become. Thank you so much.